It's 5:30, and I'm going to call this meeting of the Alpine City Council to order. Please rise for the pledge.
The flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor my
Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Yes, sir. We do have a quorum. All council members are present, excluding Councilor Chris Rodriguez and Mayor Andrew Crone. They are out. The notice of this meeting was posted at 9 a.m. on January 14th. Yes.
Do we have any public comments?
No, sir, we do not.
We don't have any presentations tonight, so we'll skip that and we'll go to the reports. And first report is from the city manager for city updates.
A very short presentation for tonight, so everyone should be out of here earlier than usual. Some of the things that we're still dealing with is COVID-19. It's a bit confusing for the state of Texas, in my opinion. Our numbers don't match anything. We still keep our website up to date, so all of the resources and information is right there on the front page when you go to the website. You can go to the State Department, you can go to the county, you can go to the CDC. We also provided the CDC updates. They have changed the quarantine rules and regulations. We still have continued concerns with the numbers being reported. This is kind of one of my prime examples. So if you go to the state website today, they show, and they don't do active anymore, they show a confirmed 20 cases and 12 probable as of from the Alpine ISD. They're indicating that they have 60 students positive out and 17 teachers and staff out with COVID. Wow. The city itself has 5 employees who are positive, and there are 2 as of this morning with COVID at the Big Bend Regional Medical Center. So looking at the state website and then just talking to the different entities within the city, our numbers are definitely skewed. They don't line up. I've come across this in talking with other city managers as well. The reporting is a lot harder. Here in Alpine, if you do the at-home test, you have to follow up. It's the same across Texas, but you actually have to call the next step to report that you were positive. Not only notifying your employer, but notifying the state health department as well. We still strongly recommend continued safe practices. CDC requires that you quarantine for 5 days and then you wear a mask for 5 days. We still strongly recommend that. For our own protection of our employees, we still provide masks. We still have disinfectant spray. We still have hand sanitizers. We still recommend social distancing. You'll see a lot of employees driving individually in their vehicles. We really are trying to keep them safe and protected. And one way is not to gather all together in one place. Some of the new things coming out, if you haven't been paying attention to the news, is insurance now will reimburse you for the home test kits. So depending on the different types of insurance throughout the United States, they may ask you to file a reimbursement claim, or they may directly cover the cost for you. As of this weekend, President Biden came out with the free home testing kits available through the federal government. It's the covidtest.gov. You can actually go to this website starting tomorrow and actually order up to, I believe, 4 test kits for your home. I'm encouraging everyone to get on and order test kits. We ourselves as the city had a shortage today. We had some possibilities that we really wanted to verify, but we didn't have test kits. Daryl was waiting for this afternoon before he would get another batch in. A lot of employees, and I'm pretty sure residents themselves, don't necessarily want to pay a copay, to pay for the test, to file a reimbursement claim now that that's available. So I really encourage people to get the free test on the covidtest.gov. I have no idea how it works. I'm pretty sure that the system will crash tomorrow when the whole US gets on.
It's open today.
Oh, is it?
Oh,
Okay, good. Get on, order them, and you can order up to 4 a month per household, so that's important. We know our numbers are rising. We just don't have the proper documentation and data for it. So we do strongly recommend that everyone take precautions. We do not want anyone to get sick if possible, and we don't want to lose any of our employees or our residents. The other big item are emergency medical services. So we're continuing to work as a task force to determine the best route. There are so many different types of options, and we definitely want to choose and present what's the best option for the city of Alpine. We don't want to overlook any one step opportunity, funding source. We want to ensure that we get as much information and we work as a team. So we did meet last week. The hospital district, if you guys don't know JD Newsom, he's been an awesome asset to that team. He's done really well with working with all of us and kind of giving us some direction, some understanding. We have an initial request for proposal. We're reviewing it. What options do we have? Is that the route we want to take? There really are a lot of opportunities. We do understand that we have a short period of time. Terlingua EMS is contract up at the end of April. So we're trying our due diligence. We're basically meeting every week, sometimes twice a week, to ensure what information is coming, what opportunities, what avenues can we go down. And the forefront for this is the hospital district. JD has continued to assist with everything, research, data, review of all the possibilities, looking at every nook and cranny. Not only are we looking at the different vendor possibilities with the different funding possibilities, we want to ensure that no matter what we decide, if it's a short term, a long term, that is in best interest. And it's not just Alpine at this point, it really is more than Brewster County. Brewster County also is dealing with this loss of West Texas ambulance service. So I really truly feel like for the first time in my government career, 20 plus years, the county and the city and the other entities are truly working together. And I think that's a real positive. So I foresee that we're going to have a really good outcome for this, and it's going to be something that everyone's going to be on board.
I might add to that, that based on discussions I've had with JD and the hospital, it's very heartwarming to realize that the hospital district is stepping up and realizing their role in the area to try to help provide health services, and realizing that they're sort of the logical entity to support an effort like this with tax dollars, because they give tax dollars for
They really are stepping up. And in 2016, when we all got together at one point, it's 6 months and there was no results. So this is the first time that there's been some good communication, some good effort, and actual visible documentation, like, well, these are your opportunities. So now as a task force, we're looking at all of those and seeing which one will be the best. At the end of the day, there will be a financial tag to it that will be presented in this month. Those are my city updates. Moving on to the finances. Short and sweet. In the packet is the actual itemized list. So what I'm presenting right now is just where we're at the end of a quarter. So at the end of the quarter, we should be roughly at 25% of revenue and expenses. I do want to point out that, and this was brought up at the last meeting with the gas utility fund, that the revenue was only like 7%. You'll notice that it's almost 19% now. As we get into the colder months, it does increase. And so we do watch it, we do monitor it to ensure that over the next 3 months, the majority of the funding should come in. And if not, Randy and I have already had a short discussion about it, that we may need to sit back and kind of look at what is in his budget for expenses and make a few adjustments and have that conversation so we don't go over the budget and that we stay within line and he gets his priorities taken care The general fund, it's wonderful to see that we're at almost 25% the first quarter. 78% of our revenue for the general fund is our property tax and our sales tax. So this tells me that our property tax, it's not really coming in yet until January, February. Those are when we get the huge deposits in. So it's great to see that the general fund and other revenue sources, our fines or fees, are stepping up a little bit. Hopefully it will continue that way. Looking at our expenses for the general fund, we are under. This is also something to be noted. A lot of our projects that the city undertakes in our general fund is our paving. That is a huge portion of our budget. Those expenses won't start showing up in the expense report as well as in the summary until about March, April, when we actually get into that paving season. Wastewater and sanitation, they're doing great, 21% of the total revenue, and their expenses are at 15.28%. We have a new utility director, so he's been in the process of evaluating to kind of see what our needs, wants, our priorities, our hardships, and it's going to go through there. He will present to council at the next meeting, so he'll be a wealth of information. So I do expect them to be under until they actually take a hold of what project they need to complete. We also haven't paid towards our aerator and bar screen. We did sign a contract in 2021 fiscal year for a little over $740,000. The money has been dedicated through the American Rescue Plan Act, but that's an expense that hasn't shown up because they haven't actually started the process. They themselves are running into a few hiccups with how are they going to implement it in some of the material that they need. Our port airport fund, and I'm glad Abel sits right here. So they are doing well with their revenue, but unfortunately their expenses typically exceed what they bring in. So he's been very line itemized. He's pointed out a few things that need to be adjusted and considered for the next fiscal year. We will monitor this one really close because we do still have the 10% match for the actual lighting project that is supposed to be paid this year. As TxDOT gets their ducks in a row, we are looking at, I don't know, a $92,000, $95,000 expense. Part of it is in the budget and part of it has been encumbered, but something to actually be aware of. Our hotel occupancy fund, it's still a little shocking. They're only at 5% of their revenue. That is expected. A good portion of our hotels, motels, and our short-term rentals actually pay quarterly, which means all of the money for the end of December will come in this month. So when you get January's report, it will reflect a higher revenue because the bulk of it comes in now. Of course, their expenses are at 20%. That's primarily just getting the advertising kicked off, and of course, salaries, employees. We're really excited. I've been giving Chris a little bit of a push. He's just as much excited, but a little bit hesitant with the COVID uprising. So we're trying to balance that out with trying to advertise with encouraging the tourism, but also at the same time encouraging the safe measures and implementing more of the safe measures in our advertising than the come on over side of it. Our gas fund, like I said, he's at 19% of his revenue. Over the next few months, of course, is when he'll bring in the majority of that, and his expenses are at 16.69%. So he did finish some of his DIM projects, which he'll talk about, and is, of course, restarting his priorities for this year. Our interest and sinking, this is my favorite fund until March. It's all revenue. There are no expenses until March when we make our first payment, and then our second payment being in September. So overall, this is just the summary of the budget. Inside the packet is the actual itemized. You look at all the different line items and see, you'll notice that our biggest expense, our biggest asset is our employees. So our salary line items will always be either at the quarterly percentage, 25% or slightly above. We do try to grab as many people to work for the city. We do have open vacancies, which does lower that line item, but overall we monitor them pretty well. In the next couple, actually next month, we will have a few amendments to make to the budget. after we did some recategorizing, reclassification of employees, we will move some of those expenses to other departments to cover the costs that need to be covered. And then, of course, we do have what we call contract employees. So we'll clean up those items so that when you're looking at it from a resident point of view, you'll notice that some of our individuals who work for us are actually contract and they will be called out. I know we have Roy, who is our inspector. He's contract, so we try to pull out the money from the salaries to cover the contract. We have a couple in the street department as well, so we'll go in and we'll pull those out and actually have a specific line item for them so you can see where the difference is. Overall, the departments are doing fairly well. We did implement some of the new grant policy stuff that was passed last fiscal year. Opening the reins a little bit for them on purchasing, giving them a little bit more wiggle room with quotes and bids and providing that documentation so that they can, you know, succeed at what they need. If it's the projects, if it's protecting the streets, a little bit of everything. Any questions? The fastest I've been, guys.
Okay, well, if there's no questions, then we'll move to the city staff updates, and the first one will be from environmental services.
Oh, I'm late, Mayor.
Those are $45.
We'd rather take cash.
So I'm gonna be talking about the recycling center stats for fiscal year 2021 and the current fiscal year 21-22. An update on the Alpine High School demo project and update on illegal abatement. Okay, so my full report is in the packet. This is like a shorter version, but for the 2021 fiscal year, our visitors were 61 to 39%. Average of 290 Alpine residents and 180 outside city limits. Next one, please. This one is the drop off for each item. Also on staffing, all positions are filled, and then we have the 2021 quarterly bulk pickup totals. Between January and October, they collected like approximately 68 tons of bulky items. The next page shows the landfill, municipal solid waste, and C&D totals. C&D ending with almost 800 tons left, and municipal solid waste with 23 tons left. The total recycle was approximately 641 tons, which is approximately 32 days of landfill space. Then to the current fiscal year, our visitors are 6535. Our monthly average is 316 to 173 outside city. So far, these are the drop-offs for the year for each item. Also, all positions are currently filled. We recycle electronics in 2021. We recycle approximately 9.49 tons. Another update, McDonald's donated coupons for volunteers and cleanups. It was a total of $300. So far, we currently use 2,086 tons of C&D and 2,644 tons of municipal solid waste. And then finally, we have a total of 137.51 US tons, which approximately is 7 days of landfill space. Any questions on those reports?
I'm glad McDonald's does donate those little coupons to that.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
Oh, following up on the high school demo project, Robles Construction stopped delivering, C&D to the landfill, and Imperial Construction, did approximately 157 tons last year. And just a quick update on the illegal abatement since June 2021, 18 sites have been abated. For approximately 36 cubic yards, and we have been charged so far $596. We started in January a community outreach. Wherever we have these complaint calls for illegal abatement, we try to reach out to all the houses around the area just to inform them that way they can take the items to the recycling center, or they can take it to the landfill or the next scheduled pickup. We have a couple of repeat locations. We're gonna follow our procedure and then maybe relocate dumpsters or set up cameras. And then just reach out to residents about proper disposal and what to put in the dumpsters and that.
You have a question? Thanks again, we appreciate it. And our next city staff update is Randy Gleason.
Council, how are y'all doing? Okay. Next slide, please. So on our steel poly replacement, completed required steel line footages replacement for both Alpine and Fort Davis. We did meet our goal of 1786 for Alpine and our goal for Fort Davis of 1580. Initiated process for 2022. We'll go into the DEMP risk model to update our prior year totals. The risk model provides required footage for the current year. So these numbers might stay the same. They might go up a little bit, they might go down a little bit. But until we enter what we've already accomplished for the year into that risk model, it'll change and tell us where we need to be working. Zone 1, 2, or 3. Currently, we were working in zones 1 in both cities. So I think we're gonna stay within those zones because they're more problematic. So in the next follow-up, I'll try to have y'all those new numbers for this year to be in compliance with them. Leak survey, currently working on 10 grade 3 leaks. We'll be starting those hopefully this week or next week. So we're hoping to get those done before our next yearly leak survey, which will probably happen in May of this year. So hopefully we don't, as long as we keep up with them, surely as we keep going and going, hopefully that our leaks will become less and less. So we're just hoping for the best. Next slide, please. So this is a map of Alpine, just so that y'all can have an idea on how much is in the ground. Looking at the blue lines are steel. And the orange, which should be yellow, is how much poly has actually been put in the ground, replaced. So kind of looking at the numbers, we have a total of together with both Fort Davis and Alpine, we have 67.623 miles of steel and poly. Alpine and Fort Davis, we have let me take that back. In total, in steel for both cities is 44 miles, 44.119. Total poly for both is 23.507. So we've got some work to do. We're just maybe a little bit over a quarter of doing what we need to do, but you know, slowly but surely. So with the numbers now of the total together of the 67.623, subtracting what we've already taken out for this year, we're gonna be estimated in the mileage is 66.943. So it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but I mean, if our risk models continue to stay very low, which I think we're at less than 0.5% for both cities. The greater the risk, the higher the percentage, the more replacement. So say we had 2-3%, we would then be probably trying to replace anywhere from 3 to 5 miles per year. So we need to be thankful that our risk models are low, our leaks are low, and that keeps us operating throughout the year. So it doesn't get too expensive for us to try to keep up with everything. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see Fort Davis, and you'll see all the steel there and how much poly, of course, smaller system. It's a lot less, but on these maps, you really can't tell the zones, but it's broken down in 3 zones. So if you look like in Fort Davis, the top left would be zone 1, the right would be zone 2, the bottom of that, using the highway of 118, and I guess that's 17 that heads back to Marfa. If you use that like boomerang there, is zone 3. So like I said, we break them down like that so that we don't have one zone. It would bring up our percentages to go up. So we do have the options to break them down a little bit more, but so far that's been working for us. So I think we're going to keep the zones 1, 2, and 3. So like I said, we met our footages. We'll implement all our paperwork for this year. We'll submit all these numbers to PHMSA by March 15th. So we're currently working on getting all that together. We do the PS 82s, which get submitted to them too on how much poly went into the ground. And so we keep up with the footages that way too. So hopefully it looks like we're going to be doing around the same footages. So we should be okay. Y'all have any questions?
What's your replacement objective with steel? Putting in poly to replacing the steel?
That's where we put it into DIMP risk model. And so that'll give us the footages for the year. And so we'll tie that into the steel number and what we've replaced. So as we go changing steel to poly, that amount of footages should be going lower, lower, lower. So we may eventually get to the point where we're just replacing services instead of mains. And right now we're kind of doing both. If we were to get to the point of just doing all services at one, go to zone 1 and replace all the steel services to poly, that would then draw that number even lower because the mains are not the problem. It's the services that are failing because it's steel tubing. And so when you use that steel tubing going up to the steel main, it's got like it's some kind of rubber that connects to the steel. And so we lose a little bit of cathodic protection on the steel tubing. So when we change that to poly, there's no need in any cathodic protection going to that steel tubing because it's poly. So we bring up the cathodic protection on the steel main. So, and that's our goal. We want to keep it at negative 0.850 in all the system. And of course, we're anywhere between 850 and anywhere to 1800, negative 1800. So the more we get out of all those little branches of the steel tubing, the better our cathodic protection will be. And once all that's over and done with, completed, then we can start working on our problematic steel mains, which we're looking at anything from 3/4 to 1 inch to 1 1/4 inch. All that kind of piping is not welded. It's probably used couplings. So sometimes those couplings start leaking. And so we would want to start there in replacing all the ones that have couplings, and all our 2 inch and above is welded pipe. So you should never have any issues if it was done right. So that's how we go. We implement what we've changed to poly with that footage. And then that model will then tell us what's our next footage. So it's just a plus and subtract. Anything else?
There's no gas, it's so raw to go.
Yes. It stops on Avenue D. We meter that. So we have our meter, and after the meter, everything that branches into Saw Ross is their system. So we're not, I mean, it's kind of like your housing authority. We provide gas to that meter, and then the system thereafter, they're in charge of it. So they get regulated just like we do with the road commission. They have to go through all their classes and everything. It's all right. Now, we can accommodate them in event of an emergency, which we have had to do in the past. We actually, one year we got called out that they had one of their machines that was picking up carbon monoxide. And they weren't real sure if that machine was accurate, so we went out there, took a couple of hours, and sure enough, we had to shut it down. Some of their furnaces, their piping had come loose, so all of it was just going back into the buildings. So we had to shut that down, and then they called in the fire department to go in there and open up all the doors and put fans to force all that carbon monoxide out. And then while they were doing that, the plumbers actually came out, put it all back together like it's supposed to. So yeah, we do. We accommodate the housing authority too. We don't govern over anything. We can't do any repairs on the inside of it after the meter. But if we do find any leaks to accommodate them, good thing about the housing authority is that each apartment has its own meter, so we could isolate it. That way we don't shut down just because one apartment's leaking, we can isolate. We can help them with that. But anytime they call our emergency number, will accommodate. Even if they call us for propane, we show up out there and it's a propane tank, we just tell them to call West Texas Gas. But at least we showed up and let them know it has nothing to do with natural gas. It's propane.
Do you have any other questions? Thank you, Randy.
All right. you're welcome.
And then we'll move to agenda item number 6, which is our public hearing. The first public hearing is to obtain citizen views and comments on the second and final reading of 2022-01-01, an ordinance amending chapter 23, city councils in the Alpine code of ordinances, amending article 2, rules of procedure, and amending article 3, rules of procedure. Are there any public comments? Okay, moving on to number 2, public hearings to obtain citizen views and comments on the first reading of ordinance 2022-01-02, an ordinance amending chapter 2, administration, article 4, finance, establishing division 3, which is uncollectible debt. Are there any public comments? Then we'll move on to our consent agenda. Consent agenda, the first item is approval of the December 21st, 2021 special meeting minutes. Number 2, approval of the January 4th, 2022 regular meeting minutes. Approval of the excused absence of Councilor Candy from the January 4th, 2022 regular city council meeting. Approval of the public utilities worker 2, worker 3, and 4 and job description. Approval of FY 2021 corrected fourth quarter investment report, and approval of FY 2022 first quarter investment report. And I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve. Consent agenda.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All in favor, or not in favor? Then we'll go to our information or discussion items, and the first one is discussion of Texas disposal system regarding solid waste, recycling, landfill lease, and operations request for proposal and tentative contract. And I would ask, Mr. Damari, you're gonna.
Yes, sir.
You ever go to Houston? He can take you to one of the finest steakhouses in the city.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you guys for having me. And I am here to discuss our proposal.
Okay. You want us to ask you some questions, or you want to jump right in? I don't care.
Here's my opinion of all of it. I did not read it all verbatim. I'm not gonna tell y'all I did, but I did look it over. So I have a proposal for y'all to pick 10 little towns in Texas and make us the top 10 on your list and give us a little extra because of, we're just special. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think Alpine should be number 1 because I love Alpine. And I think it was just, after all these years, we have given and given, and we've all paid, and we understand it's gonna go up. So can we not get a little extra for our prices of going up? That's my whole comment on that whole package. That's what I think.
Well, to comment on the fact that you didn't read it all, you may have missed the fact that we are, to a certain extent, going to be including going monthly bulky versus the current quarterly.
That's good, and that helps. That helps us. Yes.
Okay, well, I have some questions.
Here's a legitimate question.
In your contract, it was mentioned that y'all would charge the city for sludge and additional roll-offs and animal disposal. Do you have an amount in mind that you're going to charge the city for these 3 different services? Or
I don't have an amount, but we're open to discussing the amount during negotiations. As it currently stands, there would be any change in the status. Currently, we're charging for the collection of animals. We're also charging for the collection of sludge. So we would prefer to continue as is. We're more than willing to look at it though, under discussion.
so you would want to tentatively keep it at the same price that it is right now?
I can't speak to that. I'm not finance. I can't speak to that.
I have another question for you. In addition to Alpine, what other cities does TDS pick up trash on?
Oh, there are
In
several.
this area, I know you're all over the state.
We pick up Fort Davis, we pick up Terralingua, we pick up Balmaray.
And well, you do Valmont. So where do you dump all this trash? In our landfill?
The vast majority of it comes here, and if there's any overlay, then we will go to Odessa or Presidio.
And are you charging those cities to use our landfill?
It's definitely included.
And are we as a city getting some rebate from y'all for putting their trash in our landfill?
Yes, it's included.
And what happens if you're near your daily amount that you can take in, and Alpine hasn't quite completed their disposal yet from your vehicle? Do we come first before Valmaray or American, or?
I'm gonna defer, I believe so.
Well, the answer to that is that I believe that you guys, if we have to divert any material somewhere else, you don't incur additional expense as a result of that. So if something happened that we didn't anticipate, then where we had to divert something that say we didn't expect for whatever reason, you guys don't incur additional fees. Yeah, that's accurate, right? Yeah. So wherever we take it, it's all, the rates are all bound by the contract, which doesn't include additional fees for taking it to other alternative dumping locations.
Would you mind stating your name so that we can have it on record?
Absolutely. I'm Brandon Smithiel, Director of Operations with Texas Disposal Systems.
And I'll just jump in on it. My name is Rick Frauman. I'm the Director of Sales. So it's a little confusing when you look at it, and there just a great report earlier. You have a daily limit, but the daily limit is actually calculated on an annual basis. They take 20 tons a day over 365 days a year. I believe if my math's right, it's 7,300 tons. So you heard in the report that you had, I can't remember, I'm sorry, Adelina, how many tons? It was just a 20 or 30 tons below the limit. And so when we took this contract over years ago, it was about 12 years ago, I believe, we couldn't find adequate records to put in public information requests. The city didn't have adequate records. We believed that they were going over the annual limit, TCEQ annual limit. Couldn't prove it, but it looked that way. And so we, by the book, black and white, but it doesn't mean like this day is one thing or another day. It could be that 3 weeks before the end of the fiscal year, which goes October 1st through September 30th. If you were within a few tons of your limit, then we would divert materials away. And we've always been very careful to make sure you stay within your annual limits that are required by your firm, if that helps.
Okay. And I have a question, purely curiosity. I know y'all are asked to dispose of the Christmas trees after Christmas. I think it's 2 weeks in the contract. Just out of curiosity, do you tend to send them to the chipper over at the recycling center, or do you just bury them out at the landfill?
We recycle those, correctly?
Goes to the brush pile.
Yeah, it goes to a brush pile.
So they do run it through the chipper?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And that's offered back to the public for free.
right.
Yeah.
I know, I've used your services many times.
Right.
We have occasional complaints to the city about the condition of your dumpsters. I know at one time there was a small company here in town who refurbished your dumpsters, but unfortunately they moved on, but they used our place out at the ranch where they would put new tops on them and repaint them. Do y'all have any plans for some kind of a side activity to keep your dumpsters looking relatively nice? I know they get beat up pretty good.
We do. We addressed it in the RFP, and we're going to make sure that they are maintained every so often, so that they, keep Alpine beautiful.
And we want our trash to look really great. Well, I'm going to, these are the questions I had. I don't know if Sarah or Martine have any questions. I'm going to kind of break from protocol a little bit and ask the general public if you all have any questions for TDS and the services that they provide. No, we'll move on.
If I can mention something,
Yes.
I've built a good relationship with John, and in my line of business, I see a lot of ugly stuff, and it's nice always to be able to call on John to assist us with something, and he's always been available to answer the phone calls for me. So I just want to throw that out there.
His last name is on the spot.
I'll make one other comment too. I don't know if y'all still do it, but at their landfill in Austin, they have an exotic game ranch. And I was offered an opportunity, my family and my son was kind of friends with Justin. And anyways, we got to tour it, and it is the most magnificent thing. They have little methane monitors or whatever scattered around, and my granddaughter got to feed the giraffes carrots. And if y'all still do it and y'all get to Austin, I would highly recommend taking the opportunity. It's really, really good.
Thank you for the compliment.
Can I add one thing?
Yes, sir.
Before we close? Once again, my name is Rick Brown, and I'm the Director of Sales for Texas Disposal. I might be the only person in this room that was here when we started this contract, and we want you to.
You were here, yes, sir.
Excellent. You were. Thank you. There's a couple of us. There were people like Julian, Angie, there was a Mayor Rangra, we had a lot of different city managers between them. But you guys had asked us to come out at the time because you only had one company, not in Alpine, but in the whole West Texas area. And you guys wanted to increase your recycling. We heard a great report tonight about the effectiveness of the recycling. And to your earlier question, how much that recycling is diverted from your landfill space and how that saves you money. And one of the questions you asked us was, would you help us start this recycling facility? And that was a part of what we did. We're very proud of that. You're very proud of that partnership, and we want to continue it. We did mention a few new things in the RFP. There are options, and we need you to give us some direction on what you want, not necessarily tonight, but you asked for a 3-year and a 5-year contract option, which we gave you. We also gave you unsolicited a 10-year option, just so you would know, each one has different price points on it. So those were the primary options that we gave you that we need to hear back from you at some point in time. If you know, how you want to do, tie that in the contract, and then give us some direction. If we'll be working with the attorney, negotiate the language so that we can all have a chance to look at it back and forth before it comes back to your vote. But we're thrilled to be a part of it. We're very glad that I think we were the only bidder. We're here to continue to serve the great citizens of Alpine, and we continue to have a very long relationship. We really appreciate the business.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Do you have any ideas on ways we can increase our recycling? I get so frustrated when I go to my residential dumpster and it's full of cardboard. And I think, what would it take for these people to just drive 2 miles or come right up here to the city and put it in these recyclable dumpsters out here?
It's a great question. You know, the thing that you really are hamstrung with in West Texas, not necessarily Alpine, and that's why you wanted the recycling facility in the first place, is you don't have a recycling processing facility that serves West Texas. So it's not just Alpine, but almost every city in West Texas. You have to go to San Angelo, and then they don't even really want too much outside of the San Angelo area. So I think it comes back to education. I know you have, Keep Alpine Beautiful and other things. We'd be happy to work with you on some. We have a great marketing department. We have some great people that do some things now that we didn't do years ago, where we can have online education and training to put on your website that say, hey, we can get some figures that we're given here about how much recycling. I don't think people realize what the value of that is. You've got a landfill that's very, very expensive to replace. If you don't believe me, travel down the road to Fort Stockton. They got a new cell this last year, and I think it was well over $1 million. So when you come to visit our facility in Austin, you'll see all the things we've done to invest in recycling. And part of it is because it's the right thing to do. But the other part of it is to make sure landfill lasts longer. It is an economic advantage over the long term as well. So I think it's a great question. We have some additional resources that we could help with in education. We need to really partner with the city so that we can get it to all the right people with your city staff. But it's a great point. Getting that cardboard out, getting it down to Hal Flanders, getting the other stuff out. You don't need as many dumpsters in the city that way. You don't have as much illegal dumping, those kind of things. And I just mentioned one other thing. In your RFP, Judy, you talked about extra things. You asked for the way Megan put it together and your staff is they wanted us to pick up things outside of the dumpster, which we're not doing currently. We had a lot of times. Well,
You charge us for it. But we
Okay,
have a
let
process
me-
in place.
let me correct. So we had a lot of consternation about that because when we started years ago, there was lots of illegal dumping. The staff has worked really hard over many years to curb that. You guys have done a great job. So we responded without taking any exception to your RFP the way you asked us to in that regard, but we did it in good faith that you're going to continue, because I know you want Alpine to be clean. You don't want it to be the dumping ground it used to be for the whole county. And we don't want it. Our costs go up and it makes the city look bad. So we did it in a concept of, that's what you asked for, so we responded that way. But I want to just state, from questions from us, it's not really a question, it's just a statement. We encourage you to continue down the same road that you're doing, to limit as much as you can the illegal dumping, because it makes everybody's job better, and it makes the city calm.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We have several folks here tonight. Jay Llewellyn and Brandon Smithiel. And I think you guys know John Nelson.
Megan has a couple of questions she'd like to ask you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But end on the not so positive note. Sorry, homework is basically what, so some of the things as the committee who reviewed the proposal and things that we came we came back to you with some questions, you came back to us with some questions. One of the things that we really would like to address, and I know Jerry brought it up as well, is the RFP did request specifically that certain things be covered, the sludge, the animals. We are currently paying for all of that, the extra recycling bins at the recycle center. We want to encourage people not to illegal dump, and we want to provide every opportunity. My big concern is we do want that in the contract with a specific price to it.
Absolutely.
On the large animals that get disposed, I think it needs to be made very clear to the public. These aren't like your pet cat, your pet dog. 90% of what the animal shelter was taken in before we were shut down by TCEQ was the deer that get hit. Parks and Wildlife has nowhere to take them. So they would take them to what we call the pit and kind of just toss them in there and let Mother Nature do their job. So one of the big concerns we have is we can't work back with those entities, and we've shut them all down and told them, you've got to figure out another way to dispose of them. But as we start adding up the costs, these are costs that ultimately are going to go back to the taxpayer anyway, because we have to pay the employees, we have to pay the disposal just to run it. So I'd really like some kind of consideration for the large animals. Like I said, they're not your household pets. These are mostly deer. We had a poor incident in town where goats were slaughtered, ongoing case. There's nowhere to dispose of them. And we're trying not to encourage people to go drive on the highway and dump them, on the side of the road.
I think part of the reason we did not is because it's kind of an open-ended amount. There's a couple of ways we could approach it. We could do it. We could have an amount that's included, maybe at no charge, and then an amount over that, or we could have a charge amount for everything. And the discussion, negotiation, when we start working with the specifics of the contract, we will definitely.
I would definitely love consideration for.
In the city, they have a problem because they take a lot of old horses down there that import them to Mexico to kill them. So they had a bunch of dead horses that ended up in the city of landfill. They pick up the price per animal. And so if we have that, and then if somebody's bringing an animal, that person pay that price.
So if it's the person's doing it, they're automatically going to the landfill anyway. They're taking care of that. It's the ones at the city and working with the different law enforcement agencies that handle. I know the goats, I know mostly deer, a few wild hogs, I believe. I keep looking at Daryl because he knows most of them. But we really did try to let Mother Nature take care of it all until we had a complaint, and we settled it. We ended it, we called all the entities and we stopped it. I don't know where they're disposing it, but our hands are tied because when you have a deer hit in town, we have nowhere to take it.
We can discuss all those things in the negotiations.
Put that on your mind.
Absolutely.
The sign on it or something, whether it be,
I'm sure we could,
you don't have as many commercial dumpsters.
right?
The big ones are very obvious, but we do have a lot of
It might be a
commercial that are
sticker.
smaller.
It might be a sticker. We have.
We have stickers that could address that. I think ultimately the question is going to be whether or not it's going to be effective. As you know, oftentimes there are stickers that say no illegal dumping, and then people are people.
And then dump right next to it, after they read it.
Yeah. Or they come into town.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we understand that. We just want to start trying to implement things that it's easier to start targeting the areas. And if we know there's illegal dumping, we know those are commercial, that we can address it. And there's not that, well, no one told me. Well, we have, we've started the education. And I know your proposal did include a whole section on the training and the education and the services. And you even have like a little kids page to learn more about the recycling and how to properly handle it. I think you even have an online game. I do look at your website.
Very nice.
But we really want to start focusing on making it very visual to the public that these are not yours to dump.
I appreciate that. And one of the questions I have to piggyback on that is that so that when push comes to shove and there is illegal dumping, we can continue to do what we've been doing for the city in that case, in regards to code enforcement. Penalizing.
Adelina has become our kind of, what do we call it, John? Our go-to for illegal dumping.
Yes.
The city is putting procedures in place. We currently do not have a code enforcement officer. We have one individual running the department, kind of addressing all ends. So we do have procedures in place, and we have cameras, they put out notices. It doesn't get to TDS until we've exhausted all of our resources. But then it becomes someone's got to address it, and we want to keep our city clean. And every time I drive home, there's 4 mattresses, the barbecue pit's been relocated, some carpet. So we kind of know who does it, and they go and they put the little door hangers without actual evidence, a video, a photograph, or, you know, one-on-one seeing them do it. It's hard to address it, and that's where TDS comes in.
Okay.
All right.
For right now.
My question is, would you like us to present our standard service agreement that we have, or will the city attorney be presenting us one with you for us to edit and include these things back and forth?
What you present, what you have, and we'll go over it.
He's working on it. That's been given to him to address.
Would you like us to send you, okay, and we can have discussions back and forth? And do you want us to have those with him back and forth prior to the next meeting? So that you have maybe a document at the next meeting?
You mentioned February 1st.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's work to try to have a more complete working.
Mr. Bond, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
I'd also like to add that Adelina is amazing to work with, which I'm sure you guys already know.
Thank y'all for having us.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Our next discussion item is Parks and Recreation, a board presentation by Chair Gary.
Now, he's the first of many to start to for you guys.
Our guinea pig.
Always appreciate getting to speak in front of the public. Just kidding, but I guess I was gonna say, I kind of went back for about a year and to see where we were at with parks from a year. Can't say enough good things about Kirsten Reedy, the chairperson before myself. She's had a lot of groundwork and everything. So I was just gonna I'll keep it pretty short for tonight. Everything that we have done has come from this, which is the master park plan. You can see it's pretty thick. And this was, get a little history on it. Started in fall of 2018. And I think they had a lady out of Presidio that worked with it. I can't remember her name, engineering firm. And kind of put a lot of this together with a lot of local feedback. I think they had 3 or 4 or more sessions for the public coming in. So that was between the fall of 2018 and it was finalized in summer of 2019. Everything we do kind of comes from this master park plan. And it is from 2019 through 2030. So this will direct us for about another 8 years. So, two things that actually came from this that I wanted to discuss was, one, the local leagues are very highly involved for baseball and soccer and things like that. There's a lot of parents out there that are really into park systems for that, and they were pushing for some way to have more local tournaments and things. And then there's another group of people out there that are really looking for hike and bike options in the area. And some of that was the creek path that we had spoken about before, that the money's been diverted from. That's a hard option, because as we know, like private land runs through the creek and a lot of things to overcome for that. So the past project I was going to discuss was just kind of getting this whole thing together, the master park plan. Current projects we're working on, there's 4 of them that I was going to discuss tonight. One is Pueblo Nuevo, which is down there in the southeast part of town. That is a 3-year plan. I think it was in the capital project for you guys. 3 years, $75,000 each year. And that's a 50-50 grant between the city and Texas Parks Wildlife Division, I believe. Also running through a federal program, which was the Land Water Conservation Fund. So I think the city's currently kind of waiting for approval on that part before anything can happen. And so that would be $225,000 over 3 years allotted from the city, and $217,000 more coming from Texas Parks Wildlife on that 50-50. I did research the reimbursement. It's a reimbursement grant, so the city, I believe, would cover all upfront costs, from what I heard from Marcy. Thanks to Marcy, she did the grant and everything else. Awesome lady to work with. And the estimate is 2 years of construction once started. So we're looking at over a 2-year project on this thing by the time it all gets approved, ground, and then moves forward. So that's a very big long-term project. Next one is Coconut Splash Pad. That one I was looking, I think it's also in the capital project. It's now $300,000. When we spoke about it years ago, it was $200,000. I think it's going to be 50 from the city, 50 from Big Bend Parks and Recreation for Kids through fundraising, and then 2 other $50,000 grants from I think regional foundation or something. That was the plan. Costs have gone up for everything, so that one I'm not really too sure where we're at on that. That's going to be another long-term plan to find funding. I think the city's already allocated $50,000. Yeah. Awesome. What's that? So those are 2 big long-term projects. The 2 smaller ones, one I'm excited about is Shade at Dog Park, and I'm a cat owner, but the dog park shade, this is one we were actually looking forward to. I work in the school district, so we're going to try to get the BOAG department up there to donate labor, because kids need something to do, and I think they've done some other shade structures around there. So maybe some local businesses, get them involved, and school, and try to build a shade structure over there. I know it's been a thing for a lot of people to try to get that. That would be about 42 foot long by 15 feet wide. We're working with the Humane Society on that as well. Just at very early stages. That'll be an angled roof, so the hopefully the water runoff will come off to the sides, and we can actually divert the rainwater and get some kind of local stuff on the side for more shade. So I'm really hoping we can work on that project and finalize it, and then call it good. I like to finish things and have them done. And then the last one is the American Legion Park. Dr. Wanger donated 14 trees to that park. I'm not sure where we're at on those, if those have actually been planted or not.
They have been planted.
Okay, awesome. And then 3, I think, for the dog park as well. Yes. Awesome. Very cool. So that is all the current projects. 2 future projects that we were looking at is updates to the American Legion Park at some point in time, but I think that's going to be another big thing. So if we're looking at 2 to 3 years before completion on Pueblo Nuevo, I think that should be a thing looking very far into the future, because some of the ideas are about a complete revamp or reconstruction on that. If there was money, which would put you back into Pueblo Nuevo with looking for grants. So that's on the roadmap, but it's very far in the future. And opportunities in the dark skies as well. We've mentioned possibly Coconut Park or something like that to kind of implement some things there, or with Chris Ruja doing, we worked with Chris Ruja through dark skies and kind of measuring the light in certain parks, but that's going to take, I think, ordinance change or something like that because the parks are closed at a certain hour. So
But you need to stay through the action item.
I'm excited. So those are the 2 future projects that we're kind of looking at. I just wanted to mention a couple of the groups we work with that do status updates during each meeting. One is Big Bend Parks and Recreation for Kids, which is Betty Carrillo. She's the current president of that. That was Ekta Escobar, I think, fundraised a whole bunch, got all the children's equipment in over at Coconut. So they've done a lot of good things for the community. And then Alina, who looks like she hopped out, but keep Alpine beautiful. She's awesome to work with once again. Has done a lot of things. So seems like monthly we have a downtown cleanup or a tree trimming thing, which I get excited about the tree trimming ones downtown. Native tree giveaway that she's done over the last 2 years, the rain gardens, I was gonna mention that. And the grassland restoration and tree restoration, which is stuff at the Coconut Park, but that's going through Solas over there. So I think it's Solas and Adelina to keep Alpine beautiful, and they've kind of been managing that aspect of it. So one thing I would say, I know we have an open seat for Ward 2. In the past, there's been discussion about possibly having a board member. It would be great to have somebody from Solas, just because they own land for Coconut stuff. Or even if they're not on the board, you know, a liaison to keep in communication with for that area. So in conclusion, hopefully that's pretty short. I was just gonna ask, kind of y'all's ideas on parks, what you guys think we should be looking at, or what y'all are passionate about, where you'd like us to lead. And then
You know, I visited with Chris about the little park behind the funeral home. They said that's the best, dark skies, whatever. But you know, you've got neighbors there who may not want people there at 2 in the morning looking at the star. I don't know, we haven't we haven't really carried forward with it.
yeah, Noble Beaches Park.
So one of the action items that Judy has been grateful to review and look at is providing the Parks and Recreation Board kind of a task list of things that from the council's perspective and things we discussed at the board meeting or workshop, priorities, ordinances, and start focusing on things to clean up to better understand where the Parks Board needs to go. I know one of the things that Gio had mentioned had come up last year was, of course, you know, how do we move forward with allowing alcohol at the parks for festivals and things like that? So it's actually an action item tonight to kind of give the Parks Board some direction.
Something to do.
so that, but it's coming back to that partnership.
Watch out, you'll be getting something.
It's a partnership to work together and accomplish your like thoughts and ideas and goals, but also for the council to get everybody back on track.
Perfect.
So don't leave until the end.
That sounds great. And I was gonna say, I know from the last meeting, I believe, when we were talking about, I think there's 13 parks and 5 individuals that manage the park. So we're park heavy on certain things. No, there's been mention. Like, even if something isn't happening with that park right now, it scares me to get rid of it, because who knows 20 years from now or anything else, like the ideas or the opportunities that can be with all those sections of the park. And this is a personal thing, not coming from the parks, but a vision that I try to really buy from the parks, working with Robert and everything else is 5 people managing 13 parks is a lot. So the projects that I'm seeing and like that we're kind of presenting, I would like to be the same amount of maintenance or less maintenance for them, if at all possible. And even seeing with like TDS and everything else, like the wood chipper and all that, like mulching, we have opportunities, the rock, breaking rocks up at the northeast of town, that firm, I can't remember who that is. But it's just, I would hate to give away any land or anything else like that when we don't know what is possible out there, and who knows what's possible tomorrow when we're in today, so.
Some cities have neighborhoods that adopt a park that is otherwise not being very well maintained, so you might float that idea.
We actually did the adopt the park. We did not go very far.
American Legion has one.
Well, and it turned into more adopt a spot instead of a park. So you have some parks with very heavy involvement and others with not.
I think I've seen a park as well that said, this park can be adopted by you, but I'm still trying to figure out who the you was.
Let me ask you a question about some of these smaller parks. I'm kind of with you, you hate to give them up. Is there any way that y'all could recommend maybe just mothballing until so we can channel our budget money into the more popular or used parks? We still have this park over here, and maybe 3 years from now, we'll have the funding and we can recreate it and reopen it or whatever.
To mothballs, I kind of just hold off on it, retain the property, but figure out
A way to just kind of let it be there, if you will, for a while.
And we had mentioned too, I believe, even when, because I think the city sometimes worries about, you know, stuff getting put on that land or overgrowth or anything else like that. I have a neighbor over in the road, and he mows it about 4 times a year, I think. So I think that the maintenance can be very minimal if we do just retain the property and we don't have to do something, we don't have to do everything right now. You know, really just form a plan and figure out, like, Nopalitos is a very unique park, such a small little area on there. And I think the idea just has to come around of what to do with it yet. And absolutely coming from the school's perspective, I see certain things where there's money in the community out there, you know, I think people want to do and to help out and things, they just want to see the vision of what it is. And that's when people get excited.
Okay, any more questions?
No, we've already talked about that American Legion, but, you know, and I do use it quite often since I've been in that neighborhood. And, I just hope that we continue to consider some of the ideas that we have discussed.
It's just like the dark sky view. 10 years ago, that would have, you know, we got rid of that little tiny piece of land. If it works out like Chris wants to, it's gonna be great.
And that was, I think, donated in the 60s possibly or something like that.
It was donated.
That land. And who knows where Alpine, how the growth out at that point in time and everything else. The city has owned, I think, property or it's been donated as a park for quite a while, but planting the trees and everything else. You know, I always say too, from our perspective, that the work that we are gonna do, like planting trees and everything else, is gonna be enjoyed by people 20 years down the road. And that's a hard thing, because a lot of people don't stick around there for years.
When I was kind of thinking about, you know, with the planting of the trees, you know, did you have any input on that? As far as where to place them or,
Oh,
you know, that was something that.
I did not. I
that
think
I'd like-
Marcy didn't figure it out what Albert talked about, but
Yeah, and I'd kind of like for you to kind of have some input on that and where to place those trees. If we're gonna utilize that shade.
that would be great. And trimming trees, it's winter. I'm always excited for trimming
Maybe like
trees.
to do that, so.
Let me make a note of
So
it.
write that
Come on, there.
You don't have to get so nervous, and talk so fast next
Short, sweet.
I just talked about the pit earlier, got me a little scared.
Any more questions?
You know, thanks, Sharon.
Okay, thank you. Well, then we'll move to the, unfortunately, Charlene Ripley will not be here tonight.
She's ill. I talked to her and told her when she felt better, she'd get hold of us, get her on another agenda and give her 10 minutes. Thanks.
Okay. And then we'll move to our action items. The first one is approve the second and final reading of ordinance 2022-01-01. An ordinance amending chapter 23, city council for the Alpine Code of Ordinances, amending article 2, rules of procedure, amending article 3, rules of decorum, and I would entertain a motion for that.
I make a motion that we approve the second and final reading of ordinance 2022-01-01.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Motion passes. Number 2 is approve the second and final reading of ordinance 2022-01-02. An ordinance amending chapter 2, administration, article 4, finance, establishing division 3, uncollectible debt for the Alpine Code of Ordinances. Now we entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the second final reading of ordinance 2022-01-02.
Is there a second?
Second it.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. The motion passes. Number 3 is approve resolution 2022-01-07. The resolution adopting an uncollectible debt policy. And I would entertain a motion for that.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2022-01-08.
So 7. So 7.
Yeah.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Motion passes. And item 4, which is approved resolution 2022-01-08. A resolution tasking the Parks and Recreation Board to pursue 2022 key city objectives.
I make a motion we approve resolution 2022-01-08.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion?
I'd like to approve it with a amendment. It's item 5, section 1. I'd like for it to read park prioritization. The board shall advise the city council of the priority of each city park to the citizens of Alpine, which will assist the council in determining which park should be prioritized, closed, or repurposed to benefit the general public, because of what we were talking about earlier. If, you know, do we want to shut them? Do we want to put them on a hold and not dump money into something that nobody's stepping foot in? I tend to side with Darren. I hate to give up a piece of land, but I also hate to dump money into something that's expensive.
In Marfa, the city of,
We need
city
to have
county,
this-
city
we need to have a
county
second
takes
on
care
the
of
motion.
a park over there.
I need a second on the motion to amend. I need a second. Okay. Now,
Jerry, but in Marfa, the city of county pays for and maintains the biggest park in Marfa, this kind of park. So you have an option here. If y'all have a couple of parks that you can't afford to take care of, you've got too many parks, use the county.
that's possible.
Here's our answer.
Give it to Bruce County, they'll even maintain it. It's, you know, I'm the agreement that they maintain it. It's something to talk about anyway.
Okay, well, we have an amendment to the motion, a second. Is there any further discussion? I would call for the vote on the amendment. All in favor of the vote, raise your right hand. Thank you, it passes. And then all in favor of the original resolution 2022-01-08. As amended. All in favor? It passes. And then we're on agenda item number 10, which is city council member comments. So let's start with John, right?
Okay.
Sarah?
I think we had a good meeting. I feel a little better about TDS coming in, you know, with them being the only one. Are we not over a barrel? We have to accept it. But I think they're willing to work with us and maybe give us a little bit of extra help. I guess we'll find out when we go into the negotiations.
If you think about the fact that they're serving Alpine, Fort Davis, and Valmarais, and England, we're the big dog there. So they need to treat us right, because it doesn't make sense to treat the other ones less, doing okay with us. So we have a little bit of negotiation strength from that perspective.
And I would make one comment for you, Rod, on the contract you're putting together.
Yes, sir.
They mentioned that they were willing to help us with our recycling efforts from an advertising, promotional kind of perspective. I think we could put that in the contract. Just so they will feel an obligation to help Annalena with recycling. If we could get it up 10%, we would reduce a lot of waste going into the land. Well, in that case, we will adjourn the meeting at 6:50. Thank you.
It's nice to see such a collegial meeting.
Man.